Thank you very much, Georgia. This is my first visit here to Italy as Prime Minister, so it's really great to be here today in such a fantastic setting, fantastic weather. The perfect venue, I think, to follow on from Blenheim Palace just a few weeks ago. And actually, this is the first in a series of landmark meetings in Italy this week. We have the G7 Culture Ministers meeting in Napoli. We have Arsenal meeting Atalanta in the Champions League. But seriously, there's so much that brings us together. But I am here today for a very simple reason, because I recognise Italy's significance as a leader in Europe, on the world stage, as a G7 economy, a NATO ally. And so as we open what I think will be a new era in Britain's relations with the EU, our close friendship and partnership with Italy is more important than ever. And that's why it was very important for me to come so early on in my term as Prime Minister as a real statement of intent. And I think we're both ambitious for what we can do together. And that spirit has come through all of our long conversations so far, not only today, but on the previous occasions when we've had the chance to discuss a number of issues, but very much today, a resolve to work together for the good of the British and Italian people, for the security, stability and growth that we all want to see, and for the fundamental values that we share of democracy, justice, the rule of law. So, as you say, we used our time today to discuss the global challenges before us and our determination to meet them together. Georgia, I want to thank you for your strong leadership, particularly on Ukraine, because as Russia continues to escalate its illegal war, we will stand together, shoulder to shoulder, to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. We will work together, as we discussed, to deliver the €50 billion in loans for Ukraine under your G7 presidency. And I look forward to supporting the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Italy next year. We also agreed to deepen our security cooperation, already very important for both of us. Our forces will continue to exercise together through NATO. The Italian Navy will join UK carrier operations next year. And with vital projects like GCAP, we're determined to work together to boost our defence industrial capacity. On the Middle East, we are united in our support for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. We want to see the release of all hostages, desperately needed humanitarian aid flowing into Gaza, and a calming of tensions on the West Bank in particular. And of course, as we discussed, none of this is easy, but it is urgent and it is vital. So we will keep working together to resolve this crisis and end the suffering on all sides. We also discussed the challenge of irregular migration. This is a problem across Europe, for both of our countries in particular, but across Europe. As Director of Public Prosecutions in Britain some years ago, I saw the important work that can be done across borders on issues like counter-terrorism. And I've never accepted, as we discussed, that we can't do the same with smuggling gangs. And now, of course, Italy has shown that we can. You've made remarkable progress working with countries along migration routes as equals to address the drivers of migration at source and to tackle the gangs. And as a result, irregular arrivals to Italy by sea are down 60% since 2022. So I'm pleased that we're deepening our cooperation here, led on the UK side by our new border security commander, who has been with me today here in Italy at the coordination centre this morning, to share intelligence, share tactics, shut down smuggler routes and smash the gangs. Finally, as leading European economies, we also discussed the huge opportunities that we can realise together. Italy is already a top 10 trading partner for the UK and our 6th largest source of foreign direct investment. That all supports economic growth, which is the #1 mission of this government. And there's real potential now to go forward. It was excellent to have a business event first thing this morning when I met Italian businesses who are actually already working in the UK. And I'm really pleased to announce that we've secured 2 new investments worth over £500 million into our economy. Leonardo investing over £400 million into R&D and helicopter manufacturing in Yeovil, and Marcia Gallia investing £100 million into green steel production in Sheffield, supporting hundreds of jobs across the country. Those are the 2 investment decisions I can announce today. We, of course, want to go further in key sectors like defence, green tech, science and innovation to drive growth for both sides, create jobs and improve people's lives. Because underneath all of this, it is important to say that there's a huge affection between our 2 nations and between our people. Great respect for each other's cultures, shared passions, shared values. So today we're building on that, optimistic about what we can achieve together as strong partners, allies and friends. Thank you, Georgia.
Grazie, abbiamo 4 domande, iniziamo con Francesco Forsyth della BBC.
Thank you very much. Keir Starmer, on migration, you say that you're interested in the Albania scheme. Can you be clear, how seriously are you looking at the prospect of sending migrants to other countries for their claims to be processed? And are you entirely comfortable with every aspect of Italy's approach, given the human rights concerns that have been expressed? And to Prime Minister Meloni, was there a single piece of advice you gave Keir Starmer when it comes to tackling this issue? And what do you say to those who accuse you of human rights violations when it comes to migrants? Thank you.
Let me try to bundle both the answer to the previous question and the answer to that question up together. Look, what we discussed today is a common challenge, which is irregular migration. And we discussed in particular law enforcement on the one side, how do you deal with this by collaborating, cooperating, sharing data, intelligence, etc. But also the prevention piece. And that's why I had the new Border Security Commander with me today at the Coordination Centre, so we could look at where we can do even more closely related work on enforcement, sharing our data, sharing our analysis, sharing our intelligence, and sharing our strategies. And in relation, we discussed the Albania arrangement, which isn't up and running yet, as you know, and therefore we don't yet know the outcome of it, but we discussed the concept of it, along with the prevention piece as well, because the numbers here, as I've said, have gone down quite significantly. That's actually not attributable, of course, to the Albania scheme, because that hasn't started. That, in my view, is more likely attributable to the work that the Prime Minister has done upstream, as it were, with some of the countries where migrants are coming from and the particular details and the approach that's been taken. I've always made the argument that preventing people leaving their country in the first place is far better than trying to deal with those that have arrived in any of our countries. So I was very interested in that. And in a sense, today was a return, if you like, to British pragmatism. We are pragmatists first and foremost. When we see a challenge, we discuss with our friends and allies the different approaches that are being taken, look at what works, and that's the approach that we've taken today, and it's been a very productive day.
Per quello che mi riguarda, non so a quali diritti umani, alla violazione di quali diritti umani condivisa anche all'interno di tutta la maggioranza di governo.
Thank you. On this question, I think it is important for us to start from the fundamental position, which is that this is an illegal war started by Russia. And as a result, Ukraine has the right to self-defense, and we have all, Italy, the UK and other allies, NATO allies in particular, been standing with Ukraine in defence of her right of sovereignty, of self-defence, and as a recognition that this isn't just a war in Ukraine, it's a war against the values of democracy, of freedom and the rule of law, which apply to all of us in our respective countries, but across all of the allies. And that is why we've supplied capability, we've supplied training, we've supplied money, and there are further commitments that have been made recently in relation to all of those. And I think it's very important as a matter of principle that we put Ukraine in the best possible position. And that's what we've been discussing. We've had the opportunity today to touch on that. I had the opportunity in recent days to touch on that. I'm not going to go into individual capabilities. You wouldn't expect me to do that. But the principled framework, I think, is absolutely right, and we'll continue to have our discussions in relation to it.
Abbiamo Matt Taten del Times.
Thank you very much. Matt Dathan from the Times. Just to follow up on Ukraine, you both talked about your support for Ukraine. Prime Minister Meloni, are you worried that authorising the use of long-range missiles against Russian targets may escalate the war to such an extent that Russia may attack a NATO member? And to Prime Minister Starmer, on immigration, your predecessor repeatedly said he would stop the boats. You've not done the same. Does that mean you're just being more realistic and you don't think, or it's not realistic to expect the boats to stop completely? And very quickly, will you carry on taking gifts from Lord Ali?
Let me deal with my side of that first. Look, we've moved from a government of gimmicks to a government of pragmatism. And that means that I'm utterly focused on what I think is the most likely deterrent and effective way of dealing with unlawful migration, and that is to take down the gangs that are running this vile trade. Of course it's a problem when we've got people arriving into the UK who are arriving unlawfully across the Channel or any other route, and of course every government has the responsibility of making sure our borders are secure. But rather than a gimmick, which, as you know, cost £700 million to persuade 4 volunteers to go to Rwanda, we have gone down the road of pragmatism. Already, we have returned over 3,000 people by flights. So the flights actually did get off under this government, not to Rwanda, but back to countries of origin, carrying with them 3,000 people who shouldn't be here, including the single biggest flight that has ever taken off, returning people to their country of origin. And that's why we're working so intently on the Border Security Command, which is intended to take down the gangs that are running the vile trade in the first place. It's also why I'm very interested in the work that the Prime Minister here in Italy has been doing in terms of upstream work in the countries that people are coming from, which, on the face of it, appears to have had quite a profound effect on irregular migration into Italy. And that's what this is about. It's about the politics of pragmatism. The British are very good at pragmatism. It's what we're known for over the years, which is seeing a problem and actually rolling up our sleeves and thinking through which is the most effective way to deal with it. Under the last government, in my view, we had a gimmick that didn't work and cost an absolute fortune, and we're not interested in that. In relation to your question about gifts, look, the rules are absolutely clear in relation to gifts in terms of the declarations that need to be made. I said before the election, I say again after the election, the rules really matter in terms of declarations. That's why my team reached out for advice on what to declare from the relevant authorities. They reached out again more recently, got further advice, and hence the declarations have gone in accordance with the rules so that it's transparent and you can all see, according to the rules, exactly what declarations were made. But it was because I insist on the rules that my team reached out to make sure that we were declaring in the right way under the rules, and then reached out again to the appropriate authorities, basically asking for advice about what's the appropriate way to deal with this in accordance with the rules. Thank you.
Bene, grazie a tutti. Buon pomeriggio, grazie.
Grazie, arrivederci. Fermi. Arrivederci.